Well, hey everybody, it's Tyler here from the Callender Public Library, here to introduce our latest STEAM kit, and that would be the Shadow Puppet Theater. So here's an idea of what it ends up looking like, and I just wanted to give you an idea of the essentials that come in the kit. So whether you picked up one of our kits or you've stumbled upon this video, this is what you're going to need to create this structure. So, first things first, you're going to have 5 pieces of this black cardstock here. So that's going to make up the bones of the theater. Next, you're going to have each kit's got about 5 to 7 of these little pieces of cut up Bristol board, which we're going to use to make your puppets out of. This little scroll here contains 4 pieces of tissue paper, which are going to serve as the screen. You should only need 1, but we gave you some extras just in case you had any rips or tears or anything like that. And as well as this little bag here, which has got your popsicle sticks, which you're going to use to create your puppets, as well as a gel kit. And we're going to get into how those work really soon. Okay. Without further ado, let's get into it. Perfect, so we're going to start with 4 pieces of the black cardstock, and what we're trying to do is make the structure, so we're going to make kind of like an open-faced and open-backed rectangular prism to start. And to get started with that, we're going to take these guys here, and we're going to fold them in half lengthwise as if we were making a greeting card. Okay, and we're just going to do our best to make sure our edges are all lined up so we get a nice even fold like so. And then I'm going to rinse and repeat with the other ones. Cool, so now we have 4 of these sort of greeting card looking folded pieces of black paper. And we're going to stick them together to assemble a rectangular prism that is going to be the structure of our shadow puppet theater. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with 2. And we're going to start taping them together, but we're going to make sure that there's about a half page of overlap every time we do so. Perfect. So we're going to start out with something like this, and ideally to tape these together, you want something that's discreet, like this Scotch tape, but for the purposes of you being able to see what I'm doing, I'm going to use this handy-dandy green painter's tape. Okay. And the idea is that we're just going to put a nice piece of tape right along the crease. Okay. And we'll put another one just for good measure because we want it to be nice and sturdy. Perfect. Now the key thing here is that after we tape our piece, we're going to flip it over, and there's this little flap here that's unsecure. So we're going to go ahead and tape that in place too. Perfect. And then we're going to repeat that process just with all of our little folded pages here until we have something that we can assemble into a rectangular prism. Okay, so just before you go to assemble it, this is kind of what you should have. This is what it should look like on what's going to be the interior of your shadow puppet theater, and then this is what the exterior is going to look like for now. Okay, so we're going to assemble this thing, which is kind of going to look like this, and I'm going to show you how I tape this together. Ideally, we're going to be applying the same sort of tape that we have been applying, but it gets a little bit tricky, and I'll show you what I mean. So, I'm going to start by taping the exterior here at the crease. Hopefully you can see that. Okay. Okay. Cool. So this is what we've done to the exterior, and then now we're going to go inside the Shadow Puppet Theater. And we have to tape this new kind of interior crease. And so we're going to try to do the same thing. We're going to apply 2 pieces of tape. If it's a little bit messy, it's okay because this is a bit of an awkward position to be applying tape in. Perfect. And at this stage, you should have this decent little sort of wobbly square rectangular prism thing. So you didn't see this part, but what I did is I noticed that there was a little bit of a gap kind of growing between the overlapping pieces of cardstock. So what I did is I just put some tape on kind of each side there, just to kind of add a little bit more structural integrity, sort of keep everything together. So the next part is we're going to take our 5th piece of cardstock and we're going to line it up with the rectangular prism because we're going to trace out what the back of the theater is going to look like. So this part might be a little bit tricky because you're either going to be using pen, pencil crayon, or something like that. In this case, I'm using Sharpie to sort of trace out the back of your theater, but the problem is that we're kind of doing black on black here, right? So just do your best to line it up. So here we go. And what I'm doing is I'm just doing like a little bit of a margin or a border around what I think I'm gonna need, because in my experience it's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. Cool. And this, probably can't see that, but this is roughly the shape that we're going to cut out. So then before you go trying to apply the back of your theater with tape, you want to make sure that it's going to work. So in this case, this is more than enough for what we need for the back of the theater. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to cut a little hole in the back, and this is where our light is going to shine through. So ideally you want to be using a cell phone or something like that to shine light into this thing. So you just need a hole that's big enough for your device, for your device's flashlight to shine through, which in most instances isn't very, very big. If you end up folding the back to cut that hole, then that's perfectly okay. Perfect. Nothing fancy, something like that is more than enough. So with that overlap from before, with the back side of the theater, I went ahead and I just cut out these corners on the corners, so the corners are sort of inverted now, and the reason for that, this is totally optional, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to create these little flaps that I'm going to use to tape the back onto my theater. Okay, cool. So now for the back, it sort of looks like I have this sort of tray, and this ended up working great. So when I kind of put it on, almost like a lid to a shoebox or something like that, not only am I going to have these sort of flaps on the side to be able to tape it in place, but it also sort of helps the structural integrity of this thing, sort of keeps it in place. So now we're going to tape the back of our theater in place. We're just going to do the best job that we can with this one. Might not be a perfect science. Okay. Cool. So this is what we have so far. Looking pretty cool. So now we're going to get ready to attach the screen. So here's something I forgot to mention before assembling my theater, is that you're going to want to decide which side is going to be the bottom, and you're going to want to cut an opening at the front, just like so. Because it's this opening that allows you to put your shadow puppet in there. Okay, so now your kit should have 4 pieces of tissue paper, just in case we have a cut or a tear or a rip or something like that, in case you need extra. So I've got my piece of tissue paper here, which is going to act as the screen. So what we're going to go ahead and do is, there's 2 ways to go about it. There's sort of an easy way, and then there's kind of a little bit of a more difficult way. So the easy way to do this is kind of just like scrunch it all around the opening. So this is the opening of our theater, and you can kind of sort of scrunch the tissue paper and tape it into place. But what I'm going to do, which is going to be a little bit more accurate, is sort of what we ended up doing with the back, is that I'm just going to create sort of these little flaps in the corners with the excess. So I made my sort of flaps, which is, they're kind of a little bit all over the place, but that's fine. The key thing is that you want the opening of the theater to be completely covered in tissue paper. So you don't want any cuts or tears or rips, and you definitely wouldn't want one of these corners sort of exposing the inside of the theater. So now I'm going to go ahead and tape this in place. So this is all in place now. So what you're going to want to do now is decide which side of the shadow puppet theater is going to be the bottom, because what you're going to have to do now is cut a little opening for your shadow puppets to go through. So this flap right here, I've decided we don't need it, so we're going to cut this flap off, as well as any sort of excess that we think that we can sort of get rid of. Cool, so this is sort of how it's looking now. So it's secured on all these sides, and then the bottom is going to be sort of flush. And I'll show you what we're going to do to create the opening. And this will create this little opening that we're going to use to stick our shadow puppets into later. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut this off, because we don't need it. Okay, so the making of the puppets themselves is super duper easy. Basically, you just want to, from this, cut out a silhouette of a shape, character, item that you want to feature in your Shadow Puppet Theater movie, or whatever it is that you're doing. So, you're going to take this, and once your shape is cut out, you'll tape it to the popsicle stick, and there you go. You've got yourself a little shadow puppet. Since the camera last cut, I just added some decorations, so you can do this part too. There's all sorts of cool stuff in your kit, like glitter paper and stickers and so on, that you can use to create your own cinema, your own movie theater. So I'm going to show you how the illumination part works. Like, how do we turn this into a shadow puppet theater now? So I'm going to turn on the flashlight on my device, and I'm just going to, if it'll work, rest it up against the back of the theater. Oh, that's beautiful. Great. Awesome. Okay, so let's turn down the lights and see how this works. Pretty cool. Each kit comes with this handy dandy gel kit, and what you use these for are, you pick a color. In this case, I'm going to go with blue. And so when I've put this over the lens on my light, and then put it up to the theater, I can change the color of my scenes, like so. Okay, perfect. Well, that's the project. I hope everybody's excited about how their shadow puppet theaters turned out. Hope everybody had a good time, maybe learned a thing or two about optics and translucency and that sort of thing. Yeah, and I hope that your theaters turned out great. We're excited to see any pictures or video you want to send our way from your projects. And yeah, for sure, if you had any questions or stumbling blocks along the way, feel free to reach out to the library by call or email, and we'll be happy to answer your questions. Okay, that's my time. Take care, folks.